Okie dokie. Another video, another
Super
soda.
Mario RPG.
Getting a
Sonic the
call.
Hedgehog, Donkey Kong 3. Adventures of
Hello? What? Trump's been shot? Was he alright? Okay. This can have to wait, okay? This is gonna have to wait. The Eminem album is out, and I need to do it. It's much more important. Some people these days. Jeez. Hey everybody, welcome back. I'm Irish Porygon, and welcome back to another episode of First Impressions. It's the show where we review stuff theoretically the day after it comes out, but 2 days after in this case. I've been on a bit of a trip, which is why I haven't uploaded in a while. I've also just been really busy since Brat. But today we are here with the new Slim Shady LP, The Death of Slim Shady, record by Mr. Eminem himself, Marshall Mathers, Slim Shady Eminem. That's his full name, in fact. I was interested to see this record because Eminem has put out nothing but garbage in the last 11 years. Since the Marshall Mathers LP 2 in 2013, which was pretty decent, but since then all he's put out has been Kamikaze, Revival, Music to be Murdered By, all which were pretty terrible. So heading into this one, having it be called such a bold title such as The Death of Slim Shady, I was curious to see kind of what we were getting into here, and I wasn't disappointed. It was certainly something new, something fresh, something we haven't seen from Eminem in a long time. Whether that be for good or for worse, it was very bold. But anyways, the country is in turmoil, people are getting shot, and here we are doing what's really important for the country, reviewing Eminem albums. Let's get right into it. Heading into this thing, I will say, this album has really high highs and really low lows. There are some tracks on here which are just bad, and there are, honestly, there's some tracks on here that I quite enjoyed a lot and gave high scores. So as for what that means, it leads to a very interesting listening experience where you can't enjoy this album on shuffle. I'm a big purist about listening to stuff in order when you're listening to an album. And this is no different, because this is an album you very much have to listen to it in order. There is a story being pushed, which Eminem hasn't done a story album in a little while now. To what I can recall, I don't think Revival and Kamikaze were stories. Music to be Murdered By did have a bit of a plot, but nothing quite this concrete. Which creates for a very interesting experience as you go through and listen to it. It's an hour long. I think it kind of gets away with it. Some albums can't, but this one being a story-based album, it did certainly help. But anyways, Eminem has long since surpassed that sort of total fame that he had back in the very early 2000s with bangers such as the Marshall Mathers LP, the Slim Shady LP, projects such as that, which really cemented him in this kind of upper echelon of rappers, to the point where some people think he's the best in the world. I don't think it's even close, but he certainly has cemented himself as a competent rapper, producer, with that kind of shock style, which he pioneered back in the day. Has since fallen into, of course, that career valley that we kind of talked about a little bit with Kamikaze, Revival, projects like that. And I just realized I never put on a hat. 1 second. Typically I just put on hats before I leave the house, but obviously I'm in my own house, so I didn't really think about it. But nice save. You gotta have your trademark. I'm not feeling this one today. Okay, that's a little better. There were 2 singles that were kind of pushed out relatively close to the album's release date. Of course, you have Houdini, but also Tobey. I found Houdini to be pretty but Tobey was honestly got me a little bit excited for this album because Revival and Kamikaze. I honestly have the hot take of Kamikaze being worse than Revival. I think there are 1 or 2 decent tracks on Revival, while Kamikaze has about nothing. So it is good to see that there was some promise going into this. Essentially what this album does is it kind of sets up this weird, question in the first half of, what the hell's going on, I guess, because the first half of this album isn't that good, honestly. Okay, I get what he's trying to do. What he's trying to do is he's trying to set up this persona of Slim Shady, who has been the raucous, angry bully that we've known and loved for decades, but he's kind of trying to set him up in an extra negative light in this early half of the album, which I don't think really works, because he tries too hard to make him just this edgelord. And at the end of the day, you can set up a character for your story all you want, but if it's not fun to listen to, you failed. and that's kind of what this first half of the album does. But what did I think of each individual track? Let's break into it right now. Renaissance, I will say, I thought Renaissance was decent. I gave it a 6. I respect it. The beat is a little corny, and the flow is nothing incredible, but it's just traditional Eminem flow. But, like, if you're Eminem, of course you're gonna go with Eminem flow. There's just not a ton that stands out in particular about it. It's just kind of your standard Eminem song, kind of wrapped up in a minute, just an intro sort of thing. But it's kind of a more meta opener where I believe it is Marshall talking at this point. It gets confusing when Marshall, Slim, and Eminem have the same voice, essentially. But from what I can tell, it's this kind of meta opener where Eminem is addressing some of recent shots that have come out against him and kind of like being, I'll tear you down, sort of traditional Eminem meta diss type stuff. It's nothing remarkable, but it gets the job done. Unfortunately, track number 2 is one of the worst on the album. It's called Habits, and I gave it a 1. Not a 0, just a 1, but, you know, close enough. But it's certainly something. The thing that sucks about this song is that the beat is good, honestly. I like the beat, I like its production, its mix, everything that kind of goes into it. Solid kicks, well produced, and this kind of nice soundscape that I enjoyed. Very stripped back, but a solid soundscape nonetheless. And honestly, that beat kind of creates a not stellar, but passable foundation for some nice wordplay to go over the top. Unfortunately, that doesn't happen. He starts off about the first 3/4 of the song by kind of just whining about misogyny and use of the R word and a bunch of stuff that, like, we don't really care about. Like, Eminem, you do you, boo. We're just here to judge your music, man. We all know it's a cover-up, or rather a facade where you're putting on this sort of mean guy exterior, while you kind of just push that as your branding. Every artist has a brand. This just happened to be yours. So he's just kind of yapping about things that, like, nobody cares about, I guess. I see what he's trying to do, and it's that he's trying to set up the last sort of points that he tries to make, where he is, like, denouncing this behavior and saying, oh, it's just a facade, blah, 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 that kind of thing. The problem is that it's just so oddly on the nose with, like, poor wordplay and just annoying whining, to be honest, that it's not an enjoyable listen by any means. And at the end of the day, the goal is to make enjoyable listen to music to. Enjoyable being a wide term. You could enjoy getting riled up to it, enjoy listening to it, whatever, but it's just not enjoyable to listen to this guy yap about things that nobody cares about. I just don't see how anyone could unironically turn this song on and just go like, oh yeah, this is my jam, let's bop to this. And it's kind of like thinly veiled in this metaphor for addiction, where he's talking about, like, he's comparing it to, like, his history with drug use, which of course I don't want to downplay that at all, because that's a major issue for a lot of people, including Slim. But he kind of compares using the R word and misogynistic language to drug use, which just kind of, in my opinion, undermines the effectiveness of that drug use motif. Because, yeah, sure, you can get in bad habits of saying bad things. I know I have in the past and tried to make up for them. But it just feels thin to connect it to such a serious health problem, you know? And so this song just comes across as, like, a bad metaphor in the end. That's why I didn't like it. Trouble kind of comes back a little bit. It's on the lower end of a 7. I really dig the beat. It's fun, it's raw, it's new. But of course this is only an interlude, but it's a good beat. I have to say that. The subject matter kind of transitions in and out of Habits, the previous song, and kind of sets Emma for what is following. And it's a bit more clear what his intention is this time around. It's a bit of an odd attack on cancel culture, and feels like a weird, like, half-baked vent in a way. But I just really like the beat on this one, which brings it up considerably. If the beat was average, I probably would have given it closer to 4 or 5. But that beat, I feel like, is on a really high level of production value. And so eventually, at the end, I decided I would tolerate it heading into the back half of the album, or rather, the continuation of the album. Brand New Dance was a similar vein. It was kind of in the 6 region, is what I gave it. Listen, I think Eminem hating on Christopher Reeves is funny. It's always been this weird, like, one-sided attack from him. I don't know the origins of his beef with the Superman actor, but it's really funny, also considering that he died like 15 years ago. Like, what is even the point in attacking? I'm not educated on, like, deep Eminem lore, but it always gets a couple laughs out of me, and this track was no exception, where he's just kind of hating on Christopher Reeves for no good reason. And so I did enjoy listening to it, which, as I said, was the end goal of any song. The only problem is kind of the opposite of the last song, where the beat is silly on purpose. It kind of features these kind of wacky or odd synths. But unfortunately, it just sounds like shit. Because I can't take the beat seriously. And listen, a silly, non-serious beat can work wonders if you use it right. The problem is it's just not well produced. The attack on the synths is all wrong. It just sounds jarring and not in a good way. You can have good jarring music, and this is not it. The overall production is just very mid on this track. It's a mixed bag for sure, but eventually at the end of the day I did decide I did have fun listening to it, so I did give it that 6. Unfortunately, the next track, Evil, goes back to that alternating good bad pattern we've seen so far with these songs. I gave this one a 3, it's not very good. Here's the thing, at this point I'm sure that all these faux villain songs, I'm sure they're all tongue-in-cheek, I was positive. This is all like a persona sort of thing. He is speaking as Marshall through the filter of Slim and making everything raucous, angry, I'm gonna make you mad no matter what, sort of OG Eminem imitation sort of thing. But that's the problem, is that it's just an imitation, and it doesn't embody that original Slim Shady sort of feel. It just kind of tries to. Because there's just these like corny, dark vibes that don't work. You see, back in the day, I think part of the thing that made Slim's show so great is that he was like, it wasn't so much, I'm going to call you this bad word and you're going to get sad because of it. It was sort of just like I guess I'll let him say it better than I can. Hi kids, do you like violence? Wanna see me stick 9-inch nails through each one of my eyelids sort of thing. It's just this weird like shock rap thing, and that's what made him so good back in the day, where he had those good original run. And I feel like this is just trying to imitate it by being, I'm Slim Shady and I'm so mad at you, blah blah blah, and I'm evil, remember that, I'm bad, I'm an evil boy. But it just doesn't work because it's not specific. It's not that original vibe where it's just, I'm not going to explain myself, I'm going to hurt myself in front of children. It's just weird stuff like that, you know? If they ever make a Gavin Sales out of context video, this would not go over well anyways. But I feel like we're missing that sort of vibe of farcical, made-up, ridiculous characters like Slim, and we've just kind of gone to this pale imitation where it's just generic mean guy, and it just doesn't work that way. So it's just an odd attempt to be edgy. I see what he's doing, but he isn't leaning into anything that is phenomenal, or even really great, or not even close to good in some areas. And it's really hurting him in this track. Track number 6 was All You Got. It's just dialogue, it's part of the story beat, which is why you have to listen to this album in order. It's just another story beat, so I won't rate it. Lucifer does start to improve. I gave it somewhere in the 7 range. Lucifer is the strongest track on the album thus far, which is not really what you want to be saying 7 tracks in. And it's just because it's like some good bars and a good beat, honestly. It's just a good song. I'd give it a good rating. It kind of embodies that theme of building up Slim, but more effectively this time. Because it stays away from the corny zone, like so many of the previous tracks on this album did. The main exception is that kind of Candace Owens rant in the middle. I don't know, it just feels out of place in this song and doesn't really mesh well with the rest of the track, and so it's just kind of an odd place for a Candace Owens verbal beatdown. But other than that, it's good, you know. I enjoyed it. Track 8 continues to build on Lucifer. It's called Antichrist. I gave this one a 7 as well. The song also just has some really high highs on it. Some of the highest on the album, honestly. Eminem's rapping is really clean, really crisp, very also varied in different sections, which you don't always see in an Eminem song. A lot of variation in the flow, but there is a variation in this one which kind of adds some spice to it. Bizarre's section at the end is okay, but nothing special. I feel like if Eminem wrapped up the song and just didn't have a Bizarre verse, or had the Bizarre verse earlier in the song, it would have been a more effective conclusion. The main downside on this song is the first verse, which is just kind of feels like Old Man Yells at Cloud sort of thing. But I mean, after that first verse, it picks up and makes for an enjoyable track. Track 9 is called Fuel. I give it an 8. This is the highest one I've given on this album so far. Fuel is pretty great, honestly. JID or JID, I don't know, I'm not familiar with his work. and Eminem really complement each other while also just kind of using their own rap styles and their own strengths to their strengths, honestly. And it creates these really nice layered sections, which I liked a lot. They're both able to encapsulate their own styles and just make a unique, diverse piece. There's some good bars here, and it comes together to make a really nice piece. That's really all I've got to say about it. And I enjoyed it, and that's all I can say for now. Unfortunately, Road Rage is right back where we started, seeing as how it got a 1 from me, again. Oh, this one might be my least favorite track on this album, unfortunately, because we're right back where we started. Like, listen, Eminem has the right to rap about what he wants to. I don't care. If he wants to rap about whatever the hell he wants, let him go. He's Eminem, whatever. But at the end of the day, if you're gonna put messaging in a song, like, at least make the song good. It's just not good. It's more just whining, ranting, crybaby-esque sort of thing. And again, I've said it a million times by now, but like, I get what he's trying to do, which is build up Slim Shady as this character, but if the songs just sucks dick, I don't want to listen to it. It's just ranty about the same things over and over. He's already revisited this subject like 3 times on the album. Why does he keep coming back to this repetitive bullcrap? Like this song, for instance, it's just him crying about, like, trans and fat people. Like, what do you want? You can rap about whatever you want, again, but, like, make it good. It's just, like, ranting, like, blah, 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 trans, blah, blah, fat, blah, 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 Lizzo joke, blah, blah, blah. Like, what? What does this mean? What is this? The problem here is that, like, the line between satire and reality is just so blurred that I spend the whole song trying to figure out what the hell is going on here, and that's not really what I want to do when I want to listen to a song. I want to listen to a song and go, that's a good song, and I can't do that because I feel like I have to be some detective figuring out what the hell's going on, and who's Slim, and who's Marshall, and who's M, who's talking right now. And I get that's kind of the point, but it's just overblown to the point of no fun. It just makes for an unenjoyable listening experience, and I really can't say much more than that. Also, what is up with this guy's obsession with Caitlyn Jenner? He brings her up like 50 times on this album, and I don't get it. Like, okay, move on. As we reach the middle of this album with track number 11, Houdini, I gave it a 4. It's not good, sure, but it's not as bad as, like, everyone says it is. Everyone's kind of saying it's sort of like this awful track, blah blah, I hate it, blah blah blah. But it's not that bad. The melodic hooks have strength to them, and it's a nice beat, kind of reminiscent of early Eminem projects. It's not much more than that, it's just kind of there. I've said it 1,000 times now, but the lyrics are corny. Like so many other places on this album, the lyrics are just corny, and there's no escaping that. And even the chorus doesn't provide much of any value at all. It's just a corny track at the end of the day. It's not bad, but it's just, I can't take it seriously. Track number 12 is called Breaking News, and it's just more dialogue, so we'll skip it. Track number 13, however, Guilty Conscience 2, the follow-up to Guilty Conscience 1 on a previous Eminem project, which I can't remember right now, is my favorite track on the album, and I gave it on the lower end of a 9, actually. This is what the album has been building to clumsily, admittedly, for a while. This is kind of the big confrontation between Marshall and Slim, where he kind of addresses himself and goes out on a limb and just kind of, it's Marshall's normal personality where he's trying to reason with himself, and it's the voice of reason and of kindness and sincerity, versus Slim, which is the persona, which I think he's trying to spin that Slim Sprite has kind of like overtaken the psyche of Marshall Mathers and is kind of in control right now, while Marshall is there in the corner kind of fighting back a little bit. And it's this nice back and forth. Honestly, it's a really cool beat, kind of almost Dark Souls-esque, which is not a bad thing here because sure, you can call it cornball if you want to, but I think it works here. And Marshall is kind of this voice of reason saying, Slim, you've been a bully the whole time. Like, what are you doing, man? You've let your persona control you. And Slim is just over here, nah. But it's just an interesting track, and at the end, there's this kind of symbolic moment where Marshall shoots and kills Slim Shady, for better or for worse, hence the title of the album. And then Marshall wakes up in his bed, calls his manager, and it's like, oh my gosh, there's this thing in my head, it was all a dream, and it's like, Yeah, it's kind of a cliche of like, yeah, it was all in my head, it was all a dream, it was all whatever. But I think it kind of works here. It makes sense for the story, I think, here better than in other places where you kind of see that cliche. And it's satisfying, sure. There's a bit of an odd transition here as we move on to track 14, Head Honcho, which I gave a 5. The choir-esque beats continue as there's a feature with Easy Mill on here, who does have some decent bars, I'll give it to him, including a bar in Tagalog, I believe. Kind of brings that element of himself into the song, which I appreciate. And halfway through, when Eminem sort of takes over, it's okay, you know. This song just screams filler to me. It's not bad. I can't really find anything I have to rant about it. It's an odd placement in the album for this track, and it isn't good regardless. I feel like you could have cut this song out of the album and made no difference. Temporary was back to being good, though. I gave it an 8. Okay, so maybe I'm a massive cornball myself, but I have always liked Eminem's songs to Haley. I've always enjoyed them. I've always thought they're to be very personal, some of his better tracks on bad albums. For instance, there was one track I liked on Revival, which is Castles. I think it is a good song. It's heartfelt, it means something, and there's no difference here. And the songs to Haley might not always be the most well put together, but they're meaningful, and they have this nice personal depth to them, which I appreciate from an artist like M, who is typically so macho, I hate you-esque. And I sort of appreciate this softer side to him. It shows dynamicism from him. It's a really sweet, sensitive track, and it reads like an apology letter to his daughter for being absent, which is a common theme in the songs to Haley, but it's really fleshed out here as this sort of apology letter. And it feels genuine. I will say it feels genuine. My main complaint is that there are Skylar Grey verses on here. I know Eminem likes to call in singers for his choruses, but she's not interwoven into the mix very well at all. I just think there is a lack of production here, where Skylar's verses just sound really out of place. And even in some of the talking sections where she's doing like kind of oohs in the back, it just doesn't fit. It's overmixed. I don't know. It's just there's a certain lack of quality from the Skylar Grey section on this track. Bad One is a pretty consistent 7. Bad One takes a while to start cooking, but once it does, it cooks really well. M continues to address his now deceased alter ego Slim and kind of what that means to him as he wrestles with the good and bad of what he's done in his career. It's interesting to see him address this type of thing, and I think he does so pretty well. There's some verses here from White Gold, which are certainly not my favorite. I don't think they're very well done, but the M sections from Marshall, they sound pretty great, and so it kind of contributes to this kind of lower end of the 7 score from me. Track number 17, Tobey, the second single. It's a track that's grown on me. When I first heard it, I thought it was pretty, like kind of similar to Houdini. But as I've listened to it more and more, it has really grown on me as a track. Especially as it's kind of here at the end of the album, post-Slim. It reads like a celebration, a uplifter sort of thing for Marshall, and so I think its placement in the album does knock it up a bit for me. But yeah, this one is a grower, not a shower. I will give you this, the main hook is really corny. Tobey Maguire was bit by a spider, I guess I got bit by the goat. It's corny, sure, I'll give it to you. It's not in a great way. But once you get past that blemish, it's a good song. There are 3 very different types of rappers on this track, but they're all Detroit or Detroit area OGs. Which kind of is this nice kind of camaraderie sort of sense and gives a uplifting communal sort of vibe to the song, which I appreciate a lot. But it reads as the 3 rappers from different sort of backgrounds coming together and making this nice project. And as it builds to an apex, it gets you excited for what's next, which I feel like is what you want building up to the finale of your album, is that kind of building feeling. We're going up, where are we going, where are we going? And I think this song does that really well. Track number 18 is called Guess Who's Back. I won't rate it. It's dialogue. I will say I do enjoy the dialogue beats. It's just I can't really rank 45 seconds of talking on a list. The track ends on a good note, I'll say. I gave Somebody Save Me an 8. Because you know me, I love the Haley tracks, and this is one of the most Haley tracks out there. Because this one is not just to Haley, but to Eminem's lineup of kids. That's a weird way to put that. Lineup. Eminem's let's move on. Anyways, this is just like more apology for not being there, but this time to all of his kids, which I think is nice, because Eminem has a lot of songs to Haley and not so much to his other kids. But it basically discusses a lot of events, both imaginary and real, which Eminem has missed or could miss in the future if he had not been there or started to become there for his kids. And it sort of reads as a attempt to do better. It's nice placement for this track. Both the Haley tracks being after the song where Slim is shot is nice placement, because I feel like you do have this natural evolution of Slim being blah blah blah, violent, 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 Slim dies, and then Eminem is really able to be focused and break down real issues. It's nice. It's a nicely ordered album, if that makes sense. And this is a nice finish. I also think that the Jelly Roll feature is in the best place it can be, being my favorite feature on this album, except for maybe Jid. How do you say that? J-I-D, I don't know. But Jelly Rolls has some very emotional, powerful vocals here, which are mixed far better than the Skylar Grey vocals, which were too loud and overpowering. But here they kind of are more blending, and the emotion is able to be there, but not overshadow what Eminem is doing. I do think it is odd that Eminem doesn't have the last word on his own album, especially one that is obviously so much of an analogy for himself. I feel like it's a bit odd he doesn't end up his own album, but I guess I can't complain too much about that. But it just comes across as a nice track and a nice finish to this album. And that'll bring us to the end of these 19 tracks. But anyways, what do I think of the album? It's a bit hard to rank, honestly, because you have such great songs towards the end, but you also have a lot of filler tracks which could be cut, and you also have these horrifically awful tracks at the beginning. So it's hard to say. Let's break it down a little bit though. As you can tell, I didn't particularly love the first half of this album, because it's a lot, for the most part, of Slim's persona just kind of taking over in this really fake, stupid way that I didn't like. It doesn't work, as you have these bars which feel more like hastily jotted down notes than actual carefully compiled verses. And again, I understand it's the persona of Slim running around rampant within Marshall's mind, but it just isn't well done. The verses are repetitive, rambly, and simply not good. These songs do, however, provide a bit of an insight into Eminem's psyche, his thinking, what is going on up there in his noggin, which I do kind of respect, but at the end of the day, they're not that well done. But it is interesting seeing how that transitions into the tracks where Eminem kind of addresses himself, and if he went too far in the past, because the people ate up his lyrics and people loved it. People still love his lyrics. But he's asking himself, did I go too far back in the day? Did I become the bully I swore to destroy? Which is an interesting question, which we haven't really heard this level of maturity in a while from Eminem, which it was nice to hear. Addiction is also a common theme on this album. Sometimes it's addressed more gracefully than other places. But it's more often than not done pretty well, as his tracks to Haley wrestle with that, which are some of the best on the album. But one other complaint I do have is just the amount of filler, the amount of like 5s and 6s and 4s tracks on here, which just don't fit. Because you have this high concept going down. Specifically, it's telling a story, it has an evolution, a flow, dialogue, different things. But the main problem stands, which is that it's broken up by these weird filler songs, which are just feel like songs that don't match this story. And it breaks it up, and not in a good way. I feel like there were a solid 2 or 3 tracks at least that you could cut and have a good product still, and it wouldn't affect the overall integrity of the project whatsoever. I feel like if you cut those 2 or 3 songs and have a runtime closer to 50-55 minute range, it would have just been more enjoyable and also a little easier for the average person to swallow, because I don't think this album quite earns its long runtime. Because overall, there's some really high highs and some really low lows. And the overarching story is well handled and intriguing, and especially in the last half, carried out well. And these beats are well produced, I've got to say. I like the sound and the overall kind of stripped back, but in some places more filled in soundscapes of the tracks, and I felt like it was just well done in that regard. There's a lot of factors going into this album, good, bad, ugly, everything in between. But ultimately, I think it comes together into an acceptable album, and something better than he's put out in recent years. Obviously better than Kamikaze, obviously better than Revival, and I think this comes together into a decent project, and is his best stuff in 11 years since the Marshall Mathers LP2. And this could signal a sort of creative turnaround for Eminem as he looks towards different subject matter in the future, which sounds like that's what he's leaning towards, which does get me excited for the next couple of years, seeing what he might put out in the future. And so ultimately I think it's a neat creative turnaround. Again, a lot of good, a lot of bad, but ultimately I'm gonna say that I am feeling a middle 6 on this album, which kind of falls in the it's okay to good range, which kind of falls in that it's okay, it's passable, you know? There's some good tracks on here which I enjoyed. So that is why I'm feeling that rating on here. Hey, more videos are coming soon. There are also a lot of albums released this week. We got Clyro, we got Fish, we got different bands doing stuff. If you want to see my ratings for those, I'll be posting the ratings on my Instagram. I often do every week, but go follow on there. But if you want to see more video reviews like this, go ahead and subscribe. Typically every Sunday, Monday area, I've got a new video out. Until then, I'll see ya. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.